So we've got about an hour. We've got lots of stories from Miriam about her past, her future, her writing, her latest book, which is called Second Chances, which you've got an opportunity to buy afterwards. Thoroughly recommend it, full of character and full of characters. And a bit like Miriam, said he's curious to find out about things. The book is filled with characters who you'll want to get to know, but also it's a bit like finding out about your friends and neighbours. You know how you meet people and then you slowly find out more about them. And that's one of the great successes of the book. But we'll hear a little bit from the book a little bit later. There's a poem to come and also a fantastic letter from a nun. I'll just leave that there to tee it up. But before we get started about Ireland and about, normally you'd be hunched over your laptop in the writing shack. So how does it feel like to be in front of an audience for a change?
Well, it's a joy, actually, to be in a different environment, and sitting up straight and taking a few deep breaths. And here we are. Yeah, it's absolutely fine.
So let's start right at the start. I mentioned Ireland. Clearly a very, very strong and gorgeous Irish accent.
Well,
tell us about the childhood.
My childhood, well, growing up, I was born in Dublin, mother from Cork, Kinsale, County Cork, father from Dublin. And from the age, actually 6 months, I think it was, I would literally spend most of my summers in Kinsale, County Cork, a very well-known and famous fishing town. And all the way through till about 21 years of age before I packed a suitcase and left. But Kinsale was just my great love. The sea, sailing, fish, food, incredible, incredible. And my grandmother was just the most wonderful, wonderful lady. And she is actually still one of my champions and a great woman that I aspire to. So when I got on that train, probably the first week of June every year, oh my goodness, that was freedom. Because in Dublin, it was very strict. It was almost Victorian. And we had quite a strict upbringing. It was very religious. And I knew from an early age that I didn't really fit in. But when we went to Kinsale, my grandmother would say, right, it's holiday time, you're free, you can do whatever you want, and we would be gone at 8 o'clock in the morning, we would have picnics, and we would not appear back till 7 o'clock in the evening. So it was a really, really wonderful childhood. I mean, I cried for days afterwards when we'd have to get back on the train and head back to school and life in Dublin. Life in Dublin was, Dublin I liked, but it was very closed in terms of, it was pretty strict.
Well, we'll talk about the strict in a moment or two. But
yeah.
Kinsale, very similar to Rye? That same sort of
Very
freedom?
similar to Rye in the sense of cobblestones, fishing, great food, lovely people, very embracing and warm and welcoming. And from a very young age, we sailed, we swam, we walked. We felt very safe there. And as I said, I don't know, had I not been and spent all those years in Kinsale, what would have happened. Because they actually really were very formative years being there. And they actually gave me the opportunity to realize that actually I could break out. And I didn't have to be say my parents, teachers, or even the parish priest wished me to be, and the career I took, ought to take. We didn't think of it as pressure then. That was our norm. That was our norm. But Rye, I love Rye. Hearing the seagulls, the smell of the sea. And when I see that seaweed, when I go in swimming, I know I'm in a healthy place. And the seawater's improved, James. I don't know whether you've been.
I haven't been
you
in this
haven't.
year. But you have. You've been in lots.
I have. I mean, 1 week, just 2 weeks ago, I was in 4 times. Yeah, I absolutely love the sea. And that goes from the age of 4, probably, I've been swimming. I often say to people, I think I'll come back as a dolphin or maybe a mermaid or,
But the sea is your happy place, and that must be connected to Kinsale.
My healing place and my happy place, and it is a huge connection. And when we decided to physically move back, because I first came to Rye 28 years ago. My lovely husband, who I call superhero, his parents introduced me to Rye. And even though we lived in Turkey for 17 years, every time we came back, this was our stomping ground. And Chris knew it, and his family knew it for years and years. And we just loved it. So when we were making that final decision of moving back from Turkey, wherever we moved had to tick a lot of boxes, and Rye does. And I have to say, for me, we're here now 4.5 years, full-time living here. Everyone has been so embracing, you know, and accepting. And yes, it's been a wonderful experience the last years.
It's an amazing town.
To be here,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
wonderful.
Well, let's go back to Dublin.
Yes.
I don't want to talk about trauma or anything, because it sounds pretty grim, actually.
Well, our memories, maybe my sister who's here today might have the same memories, I don't know. But it felt grey in comparison to Kinsale, you know, wide open spaces, long summer days, being allowed to stay up past 9 o'clock at night, you know, and just do whatever we wanted. So, yeah, and also, I don't know whether I said to you, I started secondary school in a convent, presentation nuns, at the age of 11. And on the first day, I was a very little person. And on the first day, the Mother Superior then, and everyone seemed so much taller, and Mother Rita was her name, and she bent down and she looked at me and she said, "Where do the family get you from?" Well, I didn't know what to say. And of course, then when I was all grown up and leaving, because I did my leaving certificate, which is the equivalent of first year in university back in Ireland then, 7 years later, 2 days before my 18th birthday, shall I read it?
Go on. This is the letter from
This
Mother Joseph.
is Mother Joseph, who took over then. And it really was printed on that size paper from Mother Joseph. This was 2 days before my 18th birthday, 24th of June, 1972.
There's people doing the maths now.
Oh, we have to do the maths. And Mother Joseph was sending me out into the world to find my place. And this was the reference. "To whom it may concern, Miss Miriam McGuirk is a pupil in our post-primary school and has just completed her leaving certificate examination, at which I hope she has done as well as I expected. She is a good student of average ability. Character-wise, she is an excellent girl, honest and reliable, and with a very good sense of responsibility. She is a most obliging individual, always ready to help and on the alert to see the needs of others and what needs to be done. And she is capable of taking the initiative in doing it, always remembering to explain to those in authority. I have no hesitation in recommending Miriam to any employer and wish her every success. Signed, Mother Joseph." And that was it. That was my career guidance. That was me heading out into the world.
So how did you feel when you read that?
I laugh. I mean, I didn't mean anything. I just thought, okay, what do we do next? You know, what do we do?
Because there's some nice stuff there. You know,
there
wishing
is
you
some
well.
lovely stuff, and
But
may
the
I
average
say
ability.
I've carried a lot of these characteristics to this ripe old age now that I'm all grown up. Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, you look back on it now, obviously, and you think, really? But maybe they didn't know what to do with me. Maybe I didn't fit into the banner of be a solicitor, be a teacher, be a nurse, be a doctor, be a, you know. And as I said, I always knew I was different, and I knew I didn't fit in, and I would have to find my own way. And thank goodness I have. I have.
Has that been guiding you throughout your life, do you think?
Yeah, it probably did psychologically. Yeah, it probably did. I mean, everyone else around me went down that route, but I knew I didn't want to go. I wanted a bit of zigzag in my life, So, maybe.
We're talking to you as a local author. Was writing something you were drawn to as a kid, as a child?
Well, what would happen is, at my grandmother's house in Barrack Green, Kinsale, County Cork, what would happen is my wonderful grandmother, she was a tailor, she was a seamstress, she was a lace maker, she was incredible, and she would make all our clothes. But every year, visitors, relatives, cousins, whatever, would come from all over the world, from the States, from Australia, from the UK. And my siblings and my two cousins, we would write scripts and shows, and and we would put these shows on, and we would sell tickets. So whoever came to the house, and we would bake lovely apple tarts and queen cakes and scones, and we would welcome everyone. Sometimes we even cooked, little main course. We were 11, 13 maybe even younger, and they would queue up and they'd have to pay. And there would be raffle tickets as well, and they would, so, and everyone would clap. Now, you've reminded me, James, I think everyone else could sing. I couldn't sing. And you've just taken me back. Some of my family, they're great singers, and I'm in the Can't Sing, Would Love to Sing club. But when I was at the convent, Sister Rosario, who was not my favourite nun, but she was in charge of the choir. And from the very onset, it was the whole school choir, and from the very onset, she said, "Miriam McGuirk, you're out of tune. Out!" And one day, and I will lead on to this, one day the parish priest came along, we were putting on a concert, and I believe we were singing Like a Bridge Over Troubled Water. Well, little did Sister Rosario know that there was going to be a lot of troubled water that day. So the parish priest arrived in. Beforehand, Sister Rosario said, "Miriam, I think you need to go to the back with the taller girls." She was trying to hide me, so I could only mime. So the parish priest comes in, and happy with everything. And then he said, "What's that little girl doing at the back of the thing with all the tall girls?" He said, come down. And he said, "Why don't you start us all off?" Or as my my mother would often say, "Take the note." Well, I died. I was so embarrassed because I knew Sister Rosario, she was getting redder and redder, her fury. And he insisted I stand in the centre, and you can imagine, So why I was saying that is all my siblings and cousins, they were, they could all sing and whatever. And I said, "Look, I'll do everything else. I'll write a script, I'll write the stories." And that's what I did. And also because I come from an Irish heritage, it's in our genes. We love to tell a story, and we love a good yarn. So I became, if you like, and a lot of my family can vouch for this, I became the storyteller in our family. Now, my grandmother and grandfather had wonderful stories to tell. You think about it, we'd be around the fire, and we'd all be there, and, it was just wonderful. And even Kinsale, I always noticed, I was a great observer of people. And, sometimes I take off the accent, which wasn't very, but it was great. It was great. And that's how it started.
And some of it has ended up in the latest book.
Oh, yes.
The story of...
Oh, yes.
Yeah, singing to the nun.
Well, indeed. Well,
it's all content, isn't it?
It is. Well, what happened was Molly, who's at the heart of Second Chances, I don't want to, no spoilers, but she is actually heart of the story, and she moved into a new community, and she really wanted to embrace and bring people together and develop connection and communication. Now, I won't tell you what her first, what she set up first, because I don't want to spoil it. But because this particular class that she set up was so popular, she decided to do something else, which was called a Frolics Food and Fun Friday. And she would gather the community together. And she, along with Colonel Bryce Beckwood, would cook from her little kitchen. And on those days, there was dancing, there was singing, and so on. So that's the backstory of it. So to cheers up, I'll start with Molly's heart always warmed when engaging with the group and hearing their animated chatter and bursts of laughter. Once replete with food, wine, and cherry coke from Mrs. Cornell, the sprightlier ladies would gather around her. "Come on, Molly, sing us a song from your homeland," they begged the last time they gathered. Molly had waved a hand away. "Singing is not my forte. And because I love you all, I dare not inflict my catcalls or cries of foxes squealing on you. I'll dance, I'll even hum a tune. But please, don't ask me to sing." And that came from me, yes. But it's not too late. It's never too late, is it? It's never too late.
So we're in Ireland, and then you move over here. That must have been a bit of a wrench.
Well, I would be very honest here and say that probably from the age of about 13, I wanted to get away. And I used to plan it from the bathroom window with a little, what do you call that character with the little bag on the back on the shoulder? And I could plan, I was thinking now, if I came out of the bathroom window, I could hop onto the roof of the whatever and I could just head off. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to find out what life was about. I knew I didn't want to stay in Dublin. It was small. Don't get me wrong. I'm proud Irish, but I found it very limiting for me. And I think I was always creative. So yeah, in 1976, I packed a suitcase with a lot of hope, and I just came to London. I knew one couple. I didn't have a job. But I had a lot of hope and belief that I could, do something. And my very first job, which funny enough, my husband could relate to, was a trainee manager at John Lewis. And I was put in handbags and gloves. And I was 21, and so I was 21 going on 12. I had no life experience, very, very little in my innocence. I probably thought that the streets were going to be paved with gold. It was really going to happen for me. I was really going to, And I remember the head of department was, and I've written about her as well, Mrs. Springall. And she was a stickler for time. And she would be there. "Miriam, you're 1 minute late." I said, "Don't worry, Mrs. Springall. I'll stay an extra 5 minutes tonight." But, that was, and I can always remember her. And she's in one of my stories, short stories. She had this curved hair, like Wallace and Gromit. That curved black hair that did not move. And the glasses and the big watch. But I lasted about 1.5 years. That was it. And so that was my first job. And then my big love and passion for years and years and years, and it goes back to my family as well, of course, as well as being introduced to fabulous food and cooking. And, my sister and I, we cooked from a very early age. And I actually worked in one of my uncle's little restaurants in Cork City. And the way one gets a bowl to make, your scones and all your ingredients. Oh, no, we were just given a board, and you had to make scones from that way. I was maybe 11. So I got into the restaurant business, and I started off as assistant manager at a wonderful French bistro on 3 floors, Hampstead High Street, called Gillies. And within 3 months, I was made manager. And the company were a French-American company back then. And it was really traditional bistro French food. And we had a chef team of about, and staff about 50. Now, I was young, so I did tell a little white lie about my age, because all the staff, they're all in their 30s, 40s, 50s. And that's how it really started, food. And I had been writing, and I always carried a notebook and a pen and notes and notes and notes. But sadly, when I first came to London, which was 1976, and of course Thatcher took over in 79, it was all about push to succeed, to have the material things, to have a car, to have the right position, to earn enough money. And for a woman in business, in terms of what I was doing, it was very rare. And we certainly weren't acknowledged back then. But I was always a bit of a feminist, strong, call me feisty, whatever. But, I didn't like injustice. And I felt
it stressful? Stressful?
It was very stressful. In the sense of it started off, I was young and I really wanted to succeed, and I really wanted to make my name in the business, and I loved it. I was passionate about it. But sadly, as I say, my writing got pushed to the back burner for quite a few years. And I travelled with, that company to Manchester, down to Brighton, London, all over London. And, it was a wonderful experience, and I learned so much. So I ended up, actually, for the company, setting up and running restaurants, pulling together the team, pulling together the menu, the wine list, you name it.
It was big, high-powered stuff, then.
Well, I suppose it was a lot of responsibility. Or I often say I had a lot of power but very little authority. But yeah, I mean, I suppose it was back then, and I didn't realise. I just loved it, and I just enjoyed it so much. I'd really found, if you like, a replacement for what I thought, would be maybe not a writing career so much, but certainly something to do with books and writing. I should also say that in our family, reading was considered idleness. When we were, if you weren't doing, and I think that really pushed us to achieve and to be successful. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. I was in the restaurant business for 15 years, and there's no doubt about it. It cost me my health.
So how did you get from a high-powered job, the shoulder pads, the mobile phone, all that sort of stuff?
Mind you, there was no mobile phone, but I definitely had the shoulder pads. The bigger, the better. And because I was only 5'4.5" then, it helped, and the high shoes. But tell you,
how did you get from that to the world of writing?
Yeah, the world of writing. Okay, so what happened was I moved from the restaurant business. I took a break, and I ended up, which is something else that was very dear to my heart, was the Health and Wellbeing. And I actually was Deputy General Manager of a private health club. And I did that for 7 years. Now, in between that, I actually, with 2 other people, set up it was one of the first Irish lifestyle magazines in Ireland. So I did a lot of the reviews, and I wrote a lot of articles, and I handled a lot of the marketing and so on. What happened eventually was that I just burnt out. Completely and utterly burnt out. And I won't go into the details because that is another book. And I basically became a plant in the window, looking out at the world looking in at me, and everything moving around me, and I could not do anything.
And was there a moment where you realised that was happening?
Yes, there was a few moments. And I literally just completely burnt out, collapsed so many times, doctors, whatever, I really was. And it took its toll. I didn't know what was happening. So every time I saw a little window of energy, and eventually I thought, it's not working. No matter what I do, there's no point in when I have the energy. What's the payoff? The payoff is that I collapse again. So that went on for years, and nobody knew what to do with me. One doctor very kindly said, have you thought of keeping fit? What about swimming, walking, or what about carrying a few dry biscuits in your back pocket? Anyway, so I realised everything had to, everything had to change. But I was still in the UK and life was not working.
Have you got a poem that you ended up writing?
Aha! I could not walk from here to that curtain. I could not walk. But beyond that curtain was a little park and a bench, and it overlooked a river. And that was in Walton-on-Thames. And what happened was I started to write poetry. I don't know where it came from. It just came pouring out. I do not consider myself a poet. Maybe some rhythmic verse or whatever. But this poem came out. And I realized the person that I thought I was not working. And the person that I needed to be is the one that I needed to accept. And I hoped that others would as well. Shall I read it? Okay, thank you. And this poem, I first wrote it in 2001, sitting on a bench looking out at the river in Walton-on-Thames. And it's called Please Accept Me As I Am. Please accept me as I am. That's all I ask of you. I have always been different, ever since my little life began. Underneath this facade is a real person who cries and feels like most, desperate to take her mask off, not feel rejected so much. This young girl felt she never fitted in, was never quite good enough. She craved the limelight, hoping to fill the void inside. Please accept me as I am. A girl who struggles through life, a wish to achieve, do better, desperate for acceptance. 50 years on, she discovered what she has achieved is down to who she is and not who she decided to become. Please accept me as I am. No more struggling to mirror what others do. No more people-pleasing. No more playing a part. No more putting on the show. Time to do what comes straight from the heart. Now she lives a true and authentic life. This is her story. So please accept she as she is, because that she is me, and that is enough. Thank you very much.
How do you feel reading it now?
Emotive.
Looking back on those times.
Because I constantly wanted to fit in with what other people were like. I wanted to fit in what I thought their normal, what was my normal life. And actually, everyone else's normal was nowhere near what I had to. And when I found my normal and accepted it, and this is how I have to live. But that took me a long time. You know, that took a trip, didn't it? That
trip to Turkey.
A trip to Turkey, yes. Well, a long trip, 17 years. Adventure. So life, as I say, wasn't working. And one day, husband appeared home with tickets for Turkey. I'm like, pardon? Anxiety, immediately. I'm thinking, why? It certainly was never on my bucket list, of places to visit, although I'd, obviously read and heard about it. We went there, and I would say that within 5 days of being there, all I can tell you is that I went to the sea, the healing sea, and within 5 days, my energy started to lift. And within 10 days, my husband, for the first time, saw that the woman that he first met. Now, at that point, we were married 6 years and we'd never been able to travel. And Chris said, if after 10 days, this is how you are, can you imagine what it would be like 3 months or 6 months or whatever? So I then decided to pack another bag and go, and I rented a small house near the sea, 500 meters from the sea, and I stayed for 6 weeks to see how I would cope, manage, could I learn the language, a little bit about the culture, could I live there? Well, I tell you, it was a little miracle because life, it changed. And by the time my husband came out, Chris came out, he couldn't believe it.
So what had changed? What had helped that happen?
What had changed? Well, you could imagine 7:30 in the morning, 500 metres, straight down to the beach. And I love to swim under the sea. I love to swim under. As I said earlier, I'll come back as a dolphin or perhaps a mermaid. Who knows? But, and then I would come back, I would meditate, I would do some yoga, stretches, and breakfast, whatever. And I would just sit and read, or I'd go back down to the beach. And a friend of Chris's, a friend of Chris's gave him a word processor, very basic word processor. And within 6 weeks, I had written 7 poems. Well, I call them poetry, but, I've never been educated in poetry or whatever. This is what just came. And for my 50th birthday, 1 or 2 years ago, my lovely family, my sisters, actually put together in hardback those poems. And obviously they've been edited and rewritten and whatever over the years. So that's what, also the air was clean. There was no stress, there was no pressure. I still hadn't quite let go of my Western way of thinking. And then we moved to the mountains, 2,000 feet up a mountain in a little village, untouched for hundreds of years. It really was like going back in time. There was a mosque and there was an olive oil factory. That was it. And you would think nothing was going on in the village. And the villagers would come out in the morning into the fields and work away. And, of course, the food was organic. The fish was in the sea in the morning. It was on our table at lunchtime. And I was still saying to Chris, what's my niche? What should I be doing? What have I done? And I started to write stories. Now, I had written a few stories before then, but I started to seriously write stories. I even had a little office. And I can remember one of my dear, they've now become family, Nezra, who was in one of my first books. And she kept saying to me, Miriam, stress yolk, problem yolk. And as I started to look at how they live their lives, stress isn't a word, it just didn't come into their language or how they lived. So as I started to embrace the culture, as I started to learn more and more about the culture, I watched the villagers, how they worked, how they lived their lives every day. And that's when everything changed. And that's when I became a full-time writer. And what happened was I was writing blog posts for other websites, for other people. And then one day, Chris said, why don't you write your own stories? And that's how Tales from Turkey, the first book, was written. And then, of course, I had to find a publisher. So 2008, I became a full-time author. So I've written a lot since then. And my first book was published in 2012. Then 2015, 2016. Very proud of them. And they're there. But since I've signed with the Publishing Circle back in 2019, US publishers, the actual Linda Stirling at the helm was the lady who took me under her wing, and I feel that I've been able to raise the bar. Because what I've always, for years and years and years now, what I want to do is to continue to learn my craft. I don't put myself, hey, look at, and I don't have to be with the big five or anything like that. I just want to know that I'm, developing my craft, learning my craft, and that people want to read what I have to say, or listen to my stories or whatever it may be, and I write short stories, blog posts, flash fiction, a little bit of poetry.
It's an amazing journey, and it pretty well brings us to Second Chances, which a lot of it has been written in the writing shack.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, yes, and the editing
Bantock.
in that writing shack in Rye, yes.
So it's a shed in the garden, for those who haven't been. Which it is literally a shed with a filing cabinet and a deck.
It is a shed without insulation. And in
not
winter...
Not the most obviously creative place in the world.
For me it is. People ask me all the time, where is your inspiring place? Well, walking in nature, walking by the sea, even swimming. I don't bring any sound system. I don't bring anything with me when I'm at the sea. That's inspiring. I don't need anything, just the lapping waves, whatever. But when I'm in my writing shack, and nobody is allowed in there, by the way. Husband knocks on the door 3 times at a certain hour of the morning to bring me green tea. The only people who are allowed in are the characters at certain times. But in the summer, in the summer, doors wide open, windows open. I can, I get up really early, 5 a.m., 5:30. I hear the dawn chorus, whatever. Now, obviously, in winter, this little person needs to be in, a warmer, whatever, because we authors need to use our fingers, and we want to feel warm, and we want to be inspired. And it is cold. It is cold in there, whatever heating you put on. So I come into the kitchen in the winter months, but when I'm in there, I just lose myself, and 3 hours could go by. Now, I'm very strict about how I work every day. So currently, I've actually taken a little break, so I don't go out there quite so early, which is nice, because obviously you can imagine getting a book, writing a book, editing, polishing it, getting it, all that goes with getting a book published these days. But definitely the writing shack is my happy place.
Well, let's talk about Second Chances. Available after the show.
Yeah.
Give us the sale. Tell us about it.
Sale? Okay. First and foremost, maybe I'll give you a little bit of inspiration what came from Second Chances. Second Chances, I'd written my other books with 2 other publishers here in the UK, even though I was still writing in Turkey and so on. But I wanted something different. And we always had a base here. And on my walks in the morning, I would see this forlorn-looking lady in a barber that kind of flapped in the wind, and her hair would kind of blow in the wind. And she had this smaller, grey and black-haired looking dog. I don't know what the breed was. And every time I walked in the morning, I would see her. She never smiled. She never spoke. I would always say good morning. She would never speak. And the more I saw her, and actually the dog was even more forlorn. And the more I saw her, I thought, I wonder what it is about her, and I became more and more curious about her life, her backstory. Where did she live? I saw one of the little streets where she lived. And on that street was also, at the top of the street was a church, there was a little village hall, and there was a community there that knew each other. And I decided to write a short story, and the short story was called Days on Our Street. And when I was writing it, I thought, I could develop this into a novel. And even I was really excited, And so that was fine. And then I was at the Whitstable Literary Festival, and I walked away, and the novel that originally I was submitting to my publisher, it was, when there was the season, everyone was writing about the girl with the tattoo, the girl with the earring, the girl with whatever. And something said to me, no, I'm going to write the book. And that book, from the short story, became Second Chances. Also, I think in the last years, people have been through a lot of challenges. And I think community, connection is so important. And what do we all want? We want to feel that we matter. We want to feel loved. We want to feel needed. We want to bring communities together, because in the past, perhaps everyone was out working, no one saw each other, you'd say hi, but nothing really. And that was all going through my mind as well. Now, Second Chances is a touching tale that takes us from India to Kent, to East Sussex and Northern England. Molly is at the heart of that story. Molly's life was turned upside down when her husband, Rory, left her and her only son, Jamie. And on the day they decided, they were moving to Kent together, her son opted out and just left. And so here was Molly again on her own and having to rethink her life. which she did. She so wanted to embrace her new community. And she befriended Colonel Bryce Beckworth and Florence Scott Thomas. And they had been through loss and love, and they really wanted a second chance. And between the three of them, they start to navigate, if you like, a new life for themselves. And by never giving up hope, and by believing that they could change, they grabbed not just their second chance, but they took that leap of faith. And, well, I can't say anymore. I can't say anymore. I believe, all I will say is I believe in HEAs, happy ever afters. That's now there's poignancy, there's sadness, but obviously being Irish, we have to throw in and sprinkle the book with humour. I think that's really, really important as well. So I hope that I laughed at certain points, and I hope that my readers, the response has been good, and that they found that comedy as well, because that's what it's all about, uplifting. It's contemporary fiction, but it's also uplifting.
You mentioned the old lady with the dog.
Oh, yes.
Inspiring you, but
Yeah.
where do you get the other characters from? Because they are
indeed.
fully formed characters.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, Florence Scott Thomas was the lady, except Florence is very tall, and her dog is an Irish wolfhound. And Colonel Bryce Beckworth actually came from one of Chris's tutors when he was at boarding school, or professors rather, and how he used to dress, you know. And all I will say is Colonel Bryce Beckworth, as he is the helping hand in the community. You know, he cuts hedges, and as he likes to keep his hedges trimmed, so does he like to keep his moustache trimmed in that same, you know, pristine fashion. So that's where Colonel Bryce Beckworth came from. Booty is another character. There's a little bit of me in there. I know a few
I was
people
going to say,
that.
are you Booty or Molly?
I don't think I'm a Molly, but there might be a little bit, because I really like to reach out and help people, support people. Yeah, you know, maybe because I'm a Cancerian, we have that caring, nurturing, you know, aspect to our sign or whatever. But yeah, there's a little. Yeah, I would say that probably there's some of Molly's experiences, not in terms of husband or only son or anything like that. But yeah, some of it, and also a lot of it's from my experience of, you know, food is mentioned quite a bit, and also even, you know, London life. She heads up to London on a few occasions. Yeah.
Well, we'll pause in a moment or two for questions from friends who are here enjoying Miriam's story. I guess the final question from me is about second chances as a subject. You've talked about how your life has changed and you've had the second chances. The book is called Second Chances. Actually, it's hard stuff, isn't it? What would your advice be to somebody who's thinking, gosh, something needs to change, how do I do it?
Well, first and foremost, I will say it again, it's never too late to change. If I can change, anyone can change. Did I think all those years ago, when I was lying in bed and could not move, husband would go off to work and come back, and I was still lying there, that I would ever just completely full circle turn my life around and become a full-time author? Because that was my dream. That was my dream. And to be able, these last years, since 2008, to reignite my passion for writing. And even if nobody read my work, I will carry on writing. And until I have my last breath, I will carry on writing. So I would say if people want to change, it's never too late. But second chances, I mean, I've probably been a little bit like the cat with 9 lives, you know. But I would say is, first of all, people forget. And I've said this in some of my other talks. When we wake up every morning, and for most we can get up, guess what? There is a blank page that is waiting for us. And what we sometimes forget is we get to fill that page every single day. And that's called our life story. And if at the end of the day, there's a few things perhaps we weren't happy with or we could change. I've been writing a gratitude journal for 30 plus years. But if there's a few things that we want to change that we weren't too happy with, because I believe every day is important to make it a day well lived, whatever that means to you individually. But the following day, that blank page is there again. And you get to change what perhaps you weren't so happy about the previous day. And it's called life. And what I would say is, rather than looking, what is it you want to change? And never try to change everything in one go. Because it's just too much. It's just like this massive task. And you think, I'll stay. This is safe. But when you take that leap of faith, and you believe, we must never give up belief or hope, because if we give up that, we've lost everything. But when you take that leap of faith, it is incredible what can happen. And even now, I look at that path that I've been on for the last 20 plus years. And if you'd said to me, I would be sitting before you this morning, I would have said, really? But I am, and I have. And I really, really hope that you have enjoyed in conversation with. Thank you, James, so much.
Miriam, we could listen to you for hours.
Gosh.
Put your Turkish to the test.
Oh, no. Oh,
How
right.
do you say thank you for listening in Turkish?
Çok teşekkür ederim. Milyonlarca teşekkürler. Yakında konuşacağız. Until next time, whatever we'll say.
Miriam McGuirk, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Honestly.